Hey y'all, it's Wendy from Village Card and Craft. Today I'm going to show you how to use 3D embossing folder to create an amazing background for my Disney inspired up card. Let's get crafting. Today I'm starting with a Sizzix embossing folder. It is 3D called Tropical Leaves. And I'm going to use some dark green cardstock, which I'm going to use my fine mister and give it a good mist on both sides of the cardstock. I find that when I'm going to do a 3D embossed image, it helps to mist both sides of my cardstock and it reduces some of that warping that happens as you put it through your die cutting machine. I'm lining up my cardstock to the bottom of my embossing folder. That way I don't get a ridge at the top. And I do use a Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine and the universal plate system. It's a really handy system because it does tell you exactly what to do. So here I'm going to build my 3D embossing folder sandwich, and it does say to use my adapter plate, which works great for my Spellbinders embossing folders, but not so great for my Sizzix ones because they're thicker. So I typically just use my cutting plate. You do whatever works best for your machine. I love embossing folders, y'all, and this one is beautiful. Look at the amount of texture that it gives to that cardstock. I did actually make two backgrounds originally. I did one with unicorn white pigment ink, and the second one I'm using Dewdrop's Brilliance Galaxy Gold ink and a blending brush to just gently go over the highlights of that tropical leaves embossed area. So what happens if you don't have 3D embossing folders or you don't have the right 3D embossing folder? Create your own. If you don't have it, make it. So I actually did just that, and this is what I created, and this is what I used. I used Sizzix's Tea Time die cut, and I actually really love this die cut because it's really big and I got a lot of property covered with very little effort. I simply cut 3 images of each time, so I think I cut a total of 9, and then I stacked them together and created my own background. So there's lots of different things that you can do. Any kind of foliage die cuts that you may have will work. I'm finishing up the background and they are stunning. Here's both of them. And I ultimately go for gold. If you find this video helpful or enjoyable in any way, please give me some pixie dust by giving me a thumbs up, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. So for all of you wonderful people that have come back to visit with me again, thank you. And for anyone new, welcome to the channel. My big goal this year is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you part of the community. So hit that subscribe button and hit the thumbs up and tell me that you liked the video. The goal of my channel is simply to show you how to be inspired by the things that you love. And for me, it's usually all things Disney, hence the mouse ears. Anywho, I have this fabulous Sizzix Tim Holtz die set. Her name is called Gladys, and I love Gladys. She is super sassy. But I wasn't feeling particularly inspired last week, and off to Animal Kingdom we went. I hadn't visited with my animal friends for quite some time, and it was past time. So we're going down the main road. We're actually heading out, and who do I see? Kevin. And that's where the inspiration kind of hit me. Gladys gets a beautiful makeover, and she's going to become Kevin on my card. So let's see how I did that. So Gladys has 9 dies, and I cut all of the body parts out of white cardstock, and I cut her legs and feet out of black cardstock. After die cutting all of my pieces, I'm using some spiced marmalade and some squeezed lemonade in the Distress Oxide line, along with some finger daubers. I'm going to start with coloring Kevin's beak, and I start with the yellow since it's the lighter of the two colors, and I do use the ink pad lid to hold down my piece of die cut, and then I just continue to dab on the color. This one happens to be pretty juicy. I don't have to put a whole lot of work into it. Following a quick cleanup and picking up my die cut with my tweezers, I'm going to continue on with the edge of her beak, and I'm going to turn that into spiced marmalade. Now, because this is a little bit more delicate, I am using a very small stencil brush that's probably, well over 30 years old. So I have no idea where I got it, but it's pretty minute. So for the next section, I'm going to do the wing, and I'm going to use a combination of salty ocean and seedless preserves. The vast majority of this wing is going to be salty ocean. And again, I'm just dabbing it on with a finger dauber. I did refer to pictures that I found on the internet for Kevin so that I got her colors as close as I could. Although it's difficult to view in the video, the wing does have a space, and you'll actually see the second layer of the bird beneath that wing to give it some dimension. It's time to start working on Kevin's body, and I start with Mermaid Lagoon. This is a great blue, y'all. And I'm going to work on both of the body parts at the same time. And this part is for her plume. It's at this point that I realized I forgot to do part of her beak. So I go ahead and whip out the squeezed lemonade and the spiced marmalade again and go ahead and take care of that little part. Back to the squeezed lemonade, I'm going to go ahead and dab on some yellow so that I can color her face in. So this is actually the top layer of the bird that you see on the card. It is not the layer that has the legs extended. I'm going to use Wilted Violet, and that's going to cover her neck. Kevin's neck really is kind of a deep purple with blue tones, so I'm going to use chipped sapphire for the base to kind of get that illusion. I also add some of the chipped sapphire to the Wilted Violet to kind of zhuzh it up a little. This is so exciting. She's starting to really come together now. So I just line up the two pieces to make sure that I've colored far enough down on her neck, and then we keep going. I need to color the inside of her mouth, and I'm going to use a very small brush along with some crackling campfire. I've lined up her wing, and it has a small spot that looks down into the next layer of paper, so I've decided to color that some Wilted Violet. For Kevin's main body, I go back to my original colors of squeezed lemonade and spiced marmalade. It's time to shake a tail feather. I am going with festive berries this time, and I have gone back to my itty bitty little stencil brush. I want to create some wispy looks on her tail feathers. Back to seedless preserves we go. Let's finish up her tail feathers. I am truly loving Artist Tack. I'm going to use that in conjunction with Barely Art Precision Craft Glue to attach my two pieces together, as well as all those little fiddly pieces for the legs. Now, for those of you who don't know what Artist Tack is, it's a permanent dry adhesive that has a release sheet, and you put whatever object you want to add the micro dots to down to the bottom. You give it a good firm rub, and then when you remove that piece, it's tacky and able to be glued onto another piece of cardstock. Now, I want to make sure that these two pieces line up precisely. So in order to give myself a little bit of wiggle room, I'm going to apply some Barely Arts Precision Craft Glue down to the base layer of Kevin. That'll give that permanent dry adhesive just enough wiggle room that she will line up perfectly. I go back to the Artist Tack on the little wing piece, and again I add some precision craft glue on top of that wing so that I give myself that necessary wiggle room. And I'm sorry about my head, I really just don't see well, so I've got to get right on top of it. Finally, I attach both parts of her beak as well as her legs. Now the eyes were a little tricky. I took all four pieces and I just used a finger dauber and some blue ink, and I dabbed around the edges of all four pieces so that I got that quintessential Kevin look. And I left off Gladys's eyelashes since Kevin doesn't have those. A dot from a black marker to complete her eyes, and she's just about done. Now I've selected a happy birthday sentiment from May Made It stamp set called Let's Party, I believe, and I'm going to stamp that out in Versamark clear sticky ink and emboss that with Peach Halo Tinsel embossing powder. So make sure that your embossing gun is super hot before you get started, and hold your paper up above your work surface, not flat to your work surface. Both of those actions will minimize the amount of warping that you have on your paper. I cut down my sentiment using a pair of Tim Holtz long bladed scissors. These are fantastic scissors. If you don't have them, I highly recommend them. I am using a piece of accent opaque 110-pound white cardstock. It is awesome cardstock, and unfortunately it's currently unavailable. But if you're interested, keep checking back. You can use my Amazon link to see if it's back in stock. If it is, it's usually a dynamite price, and it's super smooth, heavyweight cardstock. I did cut my base cardstock on the short side so that it is a top folding card that is A2 size. And then I measured up my green embossed panel, and I'm just using it on my paper trimmer. I'm cutting it down just a little bit so that there's a white border. I don't really measure, I just kind of go with it and see where it leads me. I'm going to adhere my panel with some scrapbook.com double-sided tape. It's really sticky and does a great job. It's time for Kevin to take her rightful place on this beautiful birthday card. I'm going to adhere her down with Bearly Arts Precision Craft Glue. Pop up the sentiment on some foam tape, and then I'm going to finish off her plumes with pops of color in Pearl Lilac. I hope you've enjoyed my Kevin-inspired card as much as I do. Until next time, I'll see you real soon.